And with that, we're back for another Halloween special. Unfortunately, I can't promise that tonight's episode won't suck. And welcome back to the heart of the stories we tell. I'm Rob the host, and this is another look deep into what makes a story, a theory on storytelling by a storyteller who believes that every story has merit. And tonight's episode is getting to the heart of the vampires in stories, which can be dangerous for vampires, because stakes through the heart normally kill them. Now, I've been a big fan of vampires since I was a little kid, and I don't know why I didn't do this as a horror movie thing last Halloween. I mean, it's just so perfect. I play games, I watch movies, I read books. In fact, the first book I wrote that I'm trying to sell is a vampire book. All in all, though, there's a lot to go over, and there's something I want to say first and foremost. Dracula is probably the one we know best, but is far from the only one. And sometimes fans of vampires can get kind of upset about other vampires. And I know I give Twilight a lot of shit. In fact, both of these motivators I've used before. But it's a popular vampire series. And you know what? I can't say that they didn't create and modify some of the things we call vampires. So, I'm going to keep my opinion of it to myself for right now, and just say that if you're a fan, cool, you're a fan. Now, subscribe to this channel if you like what I'm saying and want to see more of my crazy theories, and of course leave a comment. I'm trying to build a community here, one where we can discuss, think about why, how, everything about stories as we get to their heart. But alright, that's enough of that. It's Halloween month, so let's get to the heart of the vampire. And that's hard, because vampires mean different things to different people. Folklore created it back before recorded history even says when it was created. But it really became the modern myth in like the 1800s. Varney, Dracula, Carmilla, actually Carmilla was before Dracula, all created different things. But what do we look at them as now? Well, first and foremost, a lot of people look at them as pretty sexualized. And I can understand why. Let's be honest, we don't need much of an excuse to sexualize just about anything, even a high school girl. So, we sexualize the vampire because we want to use them to get past social norms, because they're above that, beyond that. But we also create horrifying vampires and scary vampires, and sometimes we use vampires just as a look into the darkness in ourselves. And sometimes it's all of the above. Sometimes a cultured vampire can be sexual, but still powerful and scary and dark, to look deep into what it is you yourself see as a vampire. And that's why this type of legend has lasted so long. Let's be honest, we make video games, we make cartoons, we make movies, we sell comic books, because the vampire speaks to us. Castlevania is an awesome vampire hunting series, but would it mean as much if it was werewolf hunting? Would the fact that our Batman might be a vampire in this story mean as much? Does Interview with a Werewolf or Interview with a Frankenstein sound half as interesting? My personal first experience with the sexualization of vampires actually came in high school. Freshman year, this was the book I was told to read. The Silver Kiss. And yeah, it's high school capable, so I mean, it's not really that sexualized. The relationship is much more will they, won't they, boyfriend-girlfriend type. But at the end of the day, I didn't know what sung to me about it. And years later, when I was reading The Vampire Agent, another one I've read, I didn't understand it then either. And that's why I look into these things, why I want to explore the heart of the stories we tell. Because both of them tell almost the same story. But I don't want to talk about the specifics of those stories. What I want to talk about is the general. So, let's talk about the personal vampire. The idea that the blood is such a personal connection. The fact that some people willingly give their blood to a vampire, which makes it almost sexual. A sharing of such a deep spiritual connection. Others are forcibly having it taken from them by this wild monster of a predator. And you know what? There are people that have those sorts of fantasies. And at the same time, it's powerful. It's some sort of predator that can hunt man. Man is no longer the top of the food chain when the vampire is around. The vampire treats us like cattle. And why shouldn't it? It's evolved beyond us. It's something more, something greater. It can live forever. It can control your minds. It can change its flesh. And at the same time, it's something lesser. Depending on the version, thanks to Nosferatu, they can't go out in daylight. Now, they can't cross running water. All sorts of things. They can't enter a holy building. They're repulsed by articles of faith. And all of these are interchangeable. And once again, I just want to say, there are people that try to give Twilight shit, including myself, but they weren't the ones that created the sexualized vampire, the idea of loving the immortal. And at the same time, they're not the first one that can walk out in daylight, although they may be the first one that sparkles. I'm really pretty sure they're the only one that sparkles. The truth is that the sexualization of vampires, from Dusk Till Dawn to The Silver Kiss, hell, even the original Dracula really had it. True Blood, based on the Sookie Stackhouse novels, pretty much invented the entire concept of a vampire society that was more about sex than about terror. And even it had some pretty terrifying things in it. And all of them are just slightly different. But they're all slightly the same, too. So people created this idea, this vampire, this thing that could stalk the living and hunt them. And it was a monster, and it was way over there, the other, undead. But then we identified with that other. We sat there and said, hey, I know what it's like to want something I can't have. I know what it's like to feel the adrenaline rush of wanting to be the hunter, wanting to have the prey. I want that. And I want to be able to say I'm not stuck by societal norms anymore. I want to be able to say that I'm above humanity. I've gone beyond it. And so we then became the vampires. And no longer were the vampire slayers alone. Now they were falling in love in a Romeo-Juliet situation. And again, then we have things like the Lost Boys, where they were used as monsters, creatures of the night Elseworld. And we have everything in between. Personally, as I'm thinking through this, one of the stories that really makes me wonder about how we use vampires the most is actually a comic book one where Superman fights a vampire. This vampire general entrances him, weakening him with magic on the mind, and it all looks lost when the vampire bites into Superman's neck and starts to drain his blood, and then screams out in pain because Superman's blood absorbs solar radiation. That's how he gets his power. And that same solar radiation burns the vampire from within, killing it. Meanwhile, I've also seen stories where something like that could never work because it was a supernatural curse. It's not really the sun's light. It's you may never look at the sun again, but the light itself isn't the damage. And then, of course, that turns into, hey, Blade used UV lights. Is that going to burn a vampire? Well, it depends on whether you go more scientific or more mystical. And all these stories have switched back and forth over time. Right now, we're kind of in an epoch where the vampire is oversaturated. And I feel bad about that, because like I said, I have my own vampire novel I'm trying to sell. Well, half vampire, but through all of this creature of the night, this mysterious, fanged being, has intrigued us for so long. And now, when we have horror movies where they're hunters, or video games where they're the main protagonists, or sometimes just a love story gone horribly wrong, we're left wondering, what brings the vampire into our hearts? Why do we love them so much? I'll tell you right now, I will probably put up with just about any movie if you start the story with, just so you know, there's going to be a vampire in this. But those have been my thoughts on the vampire and how they've continued through all of the ages. What are yours? Let me know down in the comment section below what you think is the true reason why vampires have stuck out so long. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed this, hit that like button and share this video with a friend or on Facebook, because I'm trying to build up a community here. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and enable alerts, Because what I'd really like to do is build a whole community of people who can look into the whys and hows of stories. And I think that maybe, just maybe, the most important question we can come out of this is, who wants to live forever? I won't sing it, don't worry. Because that is also part of the vampire mythology. Well, just something to think about. I hope you have a good night, and thank you for walking with me through the heart of vampire stories.